Hello, my name is Brenton Harrison of New Money, New Problems, and your host for the New Money, New Problems podcast. Hope that you all have had a good week. There's not an intro song for this episode. It's a little bit of a unique one because it's a kind of a combination of what I would consider like a bonus episode and also just like a moment of transparency, right? This episode or this podcast, I should say, often has stretches where we're just doing a bunch of episodes where we give you advice. Then we'll have some money stories where people are sharing their journeys with their finances, with their families. And I may like intersperse some personal commentary in those episodes, but there's not often opportunities where I can just, kind of tell you how I'm feeling. There were a few of those moments in the entrepreneurship series where I talked about, hey, it's tough being an entrepreneur. There's things that people don't think about. There's always these moments where your business is like this close to failing, or maybe you feel like you're this close to giving up, even if on the outside looking in, it seems like everything is going well. And, in transparency, for the past couple of months, I've been like working through a general feeling of just ugh, when it comes to work. That's the best way I can describe it. That wasn't, me coughing. That was an intentional sound effect. Just ugh, that's what I've been feeling. And it's expected. This happens to me every single year. We're in the middle of tax reviews and spring meetings for our clients. So I am probably having 3 or 4 meetings a day with clients for about an hour and a half each. And I actually love that. And I'll get to that in a second. But the blah comes from some of the elements of my job that I just don't really care for. For example, I love doing this podcast. I love being able to teach. I do not enjoy chopping up videos to post them on social media. If you look at my page prior to this podcast, I very rarely posted personal things at all. I don't enjoy newsletters that we have to craft. We write a lot of articles at New Money, New Problems. I don't always enjoy doing that, but it's a part of what I have to do to make sure that I'm continuing to market the firm and bringing new eyes to what we do. It's just not my favorite element of the job. I don't enjoy, compliance, not because I don't do business in a compliant way, but I don't enjoy the process of like making sure that I've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to make sure that if we were to be audited, that all of our recommendations are up to par and documented, right? I don't enjoy the process of having to renew contracts with clients and reselling our services every single year. And that's always an element of what I do. But in periods like this where it's compressed and I'm dealing with some of those negative elements all at the same time, you just get to a point where you're just waking up every morning and you start to question, is this the thing that I can do forever? And that happens to me every single year where there's a stretch of work where I'm dealing with more of the things I don't enjoy than the things I do enjoy. And you just have kind of those hopefully fleeting thoughts of, man, like, is it time that I think about doing something else, or how long can I do this before I do things like entertaining selling the firm? When you're an entrepreneur and you do what I do as a financial advisor, there's the possibility that I could go work for someone else and have none of the entrepreneurship responsibilities and just earn a salary and go home. And to be clear, this is not just an entrepreneurship thing. This feeling of ugh, I think exists in every job. There's always going to be moments where you have to deal with things that you don't want to deal with. And, at least for me, and I feel like this is the reason I'm being transparent, this likely happens to others, have that evaluation of whether you're doing the right thing with your career. Now, when I get in these moments, I'm not going anywhere. So there's no like grand reveal at the end of this episode. I'm going to continue to do this. I feel like I'll do this till the day that I die. But the reason I feel that way is because whenever I get into these moments, I actually do the evaluation of thinking through the things that I actually enjoy, like the actual meetings I have with the clients, like the moments where after meeting with clients and having a recommendation that we made 5 years ago come into fruition, hearing their joy that they've been able to buy their first home or their dream home, or they secured a job with, higher pay or more equity compensation because of something that we recommended, just anything like that that gives you the feeling of knowing that you are contributing to something meaningful is something that's really helpful when I'm doing my evaluation. I love the fact that it's busy right now, but after our spring reviews are over, there's probably going to be 2 months where my workload is a lot lighter. I love being able to choose with whom we work. I love being able to set our schedule in terms of when I'm working hard so that I can be at all of my wife's events or my son's events. And when I do that evaluation, there has never been a year where in the midst of that feeling, I can't say, yeah, but the good far outweighs the bad. I'm just having a really shitty couple of months. I hope my mom don't listen to this episode. Not that she'd be surprised, but you know what I mean. Now, here's the bonus episode. When we were in the midst of the entrepreneurship series, we did an interview with my friend Rachel Moore Beard, and Rachel is a career coach. She is the executive director of a program called Nashville Emerging Leaders as well, which is a program that I participated in. And many of the people that you've heard interviewed, I either met or became closer to them through that Nashville Emerging Leaders program. And when we interviewed Rachel, it was with the intention of asking, hey, we're having a lot of people in this series who have pivoted from a, W-2 job into entrepreneurship. And that's a very heavy emotional and financial and family decision for those who have families. How do you help navigate people through that process? And we got some great responses from her on things to think through. And she was talking about that evaluation. And as I was going back and listening to that episode this week for my own benefit, not because I plan on leaving, but just remembering the things she said about evaluation, number one, it reinforced some of the positives that I feel about my job. She'll talk about in this episode that feeling of knowing that you're contributing to something that's bigger than yourself, being something that's kind of like a tally in the ledger of staying put. So it was very helpful to me. And I thought that this would be good to reintroduce. In transparency, I don't even know why we didn't release it in the first place. I do remember we were going to release it as a private episode to our email list. Well, that didn't happen. We're releasing it to everybody because I am hoping that in this moment of transparency, it speaks to at least some of our listeners. But I'm also hoping that some of the tips that Rachel shared will either give you the clarity to evaluate your job in a way that may convince you that things aren't as bad as it may seem, or it may give you the clarity to say, oh no, this job actually sucks. And maybe I need to consider a job at a different company, or maybe I need to consider a new career completely. But whatever the result is, I think that you'll find some value from these moments with Rachel. So after I shut up, the next voice that you hear will be me again from the past, introducing Rachel Moore Beard to the podcast. I hope you enjoy. Rachel, welcome to the New Money, New Problems podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, no, I appreciate you. We've done this series over the past month and a half or so, really past couple months, where we've been talking about people who have kind of reached the point of, I won't say no return, but they've reached like a crossroads in their career. And, one of the people I thought would help in navigating some of those internal and external conversations was you.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of these conversations right now.
Well, if you could introduce yourself to our audience and what you do and your specialty so they can get to know you a little better.
Sure. So I'm Rachel Moore Beard. I'm a leadership development trainer and coach. I do facilitation and strategic planning, sort of group problem solving. But primarily when I work with individuals, I'm partnering as a thought partner to help them identify the shift they want to make for themselves and how to get there with some accountability. I really look at finding folks who are either in transition or want to be in transition and don't know where to begin. That's my ideal client.
And how does one decide that that's an ideal client? Like I know in our industry, we work with a ton of people, and then from that experience, you kind of nail down, okay, this is the type of industry or this is the family makeup that I enjoy working with. What is it about your background, your story? where you started talking to people who were going through those periods and you said, this is where I want to focus my time?
Yeah, I think I get to work with a lot of young and emerging leaders. And so being able to see people who either haven't yet connected to their purpose or activated their full potential really does meet my mission. And so helping people get to that place is really important. And it's something that as a coach is one of the most rewarding things you can do is really just asking questions. Um, get digging deep with folks and helping them notice that like maybe there is more I could do, or maybe there are next steps right in front of me. I just haven't been brave enough or bold enough to take those steps.
We, you are the leader of a program called Nashville Emerging Leaders, in which I participated. We had Liz Carroll on our last episode, and that's how we met. And it's interesting when I was going through that program, and you and I have had this conversation. There was an opportunity to meet with your company, your organization, to have a coaching session. And I remember, being told, oh, not everybody has signed up for their session, which was crazy to me because I'm like, if you offer me something free, I'm
Yeah.
going to take it. But I was very curious coming into the session because I had no idea of what to expect. Like you hear someone say that they offer coaching and it's like, well, what does that really mean? And I shared with you that during the session, I was working as a part of a firm at the time. I had been at that firm for almost a decade. But that session was the first time that I even said out loud and realized to myself, oh, there's something about the structure of my life and my job right now that actually is counterintuitive to the way I say I want to live my life. So to me, it's a very long way of asking this question, but for someone else who is curious as to what the relationship looks like literally, what does the relationship look like? I come and I put my feet up on the couch. Like, what does a coaching relationship look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, coaches are trained in processes to really deeply question kind of everything, which is why I'm great at it because I'm a super curious person. But it's really about the client's agenda and understanding that when you come in, you already have everything you need to succeed within you. I'm just going to ask you questions and sort of challenge your assumptions, open to possibilities that maybe you haven't considered before. Through a series of questions, maybe some tools and resources, maybe some deep reflection work, trial and error, there's homework involved, right? But there's a deep accountability with the coach in confidentiality to be completely honest about what it is you really want to see for your life and what you're willing to do to get there. So it's mostly just
Now, let me ask you
conversations.
this. Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, like I said, when I walked in, I didn't know what to expect, but I definitely didn't think that in the middle of that conversation, I was going to be told, well, that doesn't sound like it goes together, does it? And me being like, man, I guess it doesn't go together. So now let's dig into kind of what we've been talking about in this series. You said you're having this conversation more and more for people at a crossroads. Why do you think that is? And what do the conversations look like?
Well, I think people are starting to recognize and appreciate what it's like to live on purpose, to be connected and understand your purpose, your potential, and how to get to that place. I think these are wide open for us in terms of making our own pathway. And truly, I think as a response to COVID-19 pandemic, people realized how much they either really loved what they did or really didn't. And so we've got an opportunity now to kind of find a way to live every day in a more satisfied way. And that sometimes means not working where you're working, not working for someone when you've been working for someone, and trying new things. I think also I'll say like generationally, folks are in the workforce now are much more risk taking. They're a little bit more open to different possibilities, and you can kind of have a side hustle that becomes your main gig when you work from home or you're in a more flexible schedule. And so I think opportunities exist now. I think people are living more out of their values and alignment, and I really appreciate that piece. And I think There's more coaches and people writing books and having this conversation than ever before, which I think is wonderful.
True. So if someone comes to you and you can sense, even if they haven't quite articulated, that they are at a crossroads and that there may be some misalignment, what type of questions do you ask them to ask themselves? Like, what is a part of that process to evaluating whether it's just a funk and maybe there's some elements about this particular company that can be changed, or whether it's like, oh no, this is a step beyond that?
Yeah. So there's two things that I think are important about that. One is understanding your values and how you're aligned to them, both yourself and integrity with yourself, and also with your day to day responsibilities, and maybe your job or career and the impact that you're having. That is key to everything. And that's where I start with almost every single client. The other part is that mindset piece and really tuning in to, is this a job you go to and you have to do your work and you feel like you're chugging through over and over somebody else's agenda? Or is this something where you get to do things and you have an impact? You understand and appreciate your impact. You can see the value you're having in an organization. Those two things have to be there for folks to feel satisfied. And because we spend a third of our life at work, a lot of us, it's important to know that it's values aligned and that you know your impact, that you feel privileged to get to do what you do and not just having to turn a cog in a wheel.
Let's say that it hasn't reached that serious level and it is simply establishing some more boundaries, and maybe they are, if they're an engineer, like, well, you can keep being an engineer but tell your boss to stop calling you at 8 p.m., right? Like, how do you build that skill set to advocate for yourself?
Oh man, yeah. This is one that I probably have a conversation every day, is that your time boundaries are yours to set, and that demanding respect from those around you about how they access you is really your decision to make. And I always try to remind people that how you start is how you go. And so if you came in early and hot and you were working 60 hours and everybody could call you at whatever day time they wanted, then that's going to be how they see you. And so it's good to keep consistency and set clear expectations right from the beginning. Like, I'm an NSC soccer fan. I am not available on Saturday nights because I'm watching soccer. So please don't reach out to me. And I think being clear about that is important, and creating that balance for yourself, and understanding too that when you set a boundary, it doesn't mean you're not available. When we work with clients, we know that clients have emergencies and we need to be flexible and adaptable to that. But it's much easier to do that when you have good time boundaries and you haven't been taken advantage of, than when you're constantly being drawn into what is not truly an emergency.
Yeah, and it's funny because from the perspective of somebody who often works odd hours, there are some things where, to your point, like being able to stand up for yourself and just set those boundaries on the front end is helpful. Like I am known to sit while watching TV in the evenings and just like fire off a ton of emails. So it's like you could get 7 emails from me at 10:30 at night. And it wasn't until my wife said, like, I hate when people email me after hours that I realized, like, oh, okay, I'm still going to continue to send these emails, but I should let people know I have no expectation that you reply to this message, outside of business hours. It's just, this is the time I had to work on it. So sometimes, like, just even being made aware can be very powerful. Now, let me ask you this. Oh, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, if I was your coach, I would encourage you to even schedule send those for the next morning. So you can just know that it's not showing up in people's inbox at a time when they would feel like they had to respond.
See, fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, like power dynamics, expectations, all of those things that, you're living your life and you don't understand the pressures that you could be putting on someone else, to me, so articulates some of the value that you bring. So I will ask for my final question. And like I said, I'm so appreciative of your time. If you could talk to someone who is at a point in their career where they're asking themselves some questions, what are the first steps in terms of hey, here's how you find a coach in your area, or like here's just some minimal things that you can do even if you've decided to handle this internally?
Yeah, so in terms of finding a coach, I think it's really important to talk to people who had coaching and find out who they used. I know that um, finding the right coach is really important. Having had really good coaches and not so good fits for me, I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to someone who's going to challenge my perspective. And so I think looking for someone who comes recommended, but also maybe is different from you or brings a different perspective is important. So a lot of times people look for coaches in their industry. There's coaches specifically for realtors, let's say. And I think that's wonderful. And also sometimes those folks bring an agenda because they've been where you are. And that can create sort of echo chamber that's not always beneficial. So that's one piece of advice. In terms of doing the work on your own, I think having a really um, good practice of intention setting and reflection, and sort of having a writing practice or some place where you keep there's even apps for it now where you keep up with kind of your mood, your sense of well-being, how you feel about your work, where you're capturing your wins, how you set appreciation for yourself and what you've been able to do and your impact is really important. And it's a good way for you to measure kind of themes over time. I have clients who kind of keep a calendar and they color code their days by good vibes or bad vibes or neutral, right? And they just track over time so they can really see, I had a bad week, but my month was good and I feel good about that. So that's one really easy way I think people can access different kinds of journaling or apps or some way to capture the themes over time, because it's really hard when you're in a sticky moment to see the larger picture. And so spending some time with yourself on a regular basis and kind of capturing that helps you pull back and see it from a different view.
I'll say it because you told me not to say it. Well, you told me you weren't going to say it, but we talked about this and I was like, it's almost like you're like a therapist for my career. And you're like, no, it's different than a therapist. And I'm like, well, I know that it's different, but to your point, we spend so much of our lives at work and it's such a huge part of who we are that to me, when we were talking offline and I was even talking to some people about having you on, I said, the reason that I want to do this is because I feel like we're in the era where everyone is bringing to the social forefront the importance of mental health, right? It's like they're removing the stigma from it. Not only are they removing the stigma from it, they're saying there's no stigma at all. We're encouraged. Everybody needs to talk to a therapist. And to me, I'm like, the part that hasn't come with that is if you're going to spend 8 to 12 hours of your day doing something, wouldn't it be helpful to talk to somebody about that thing that you're doing? So to me, I'm not saying you're a therapist, but I'm saying we need to bring you to the forefront as well. So I appreciate you for spending some time educating us about what you do.
Absolutely. And to your point, I'll just say I recently got certified in a whole new set of tools around embodiment and somatic practice because the lines are getting blurrier and blurrier about what's needed in coaching. And there's a lot of trauma and emotional well-being pieces that really impact your ability to work well. So I see it as an evolving picture, and I definitely agree with you. It is super needed right now. So thanks for making that point.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship. I'm going to make sure that your contact information and resources are in this episode. And thank you for being a guest on the New Money, New Problems podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brenton. I love it.
From New Money, New Problems, this was the New Money, New Problems podcast, a show for successful professionals searching for the tools they need to navigate financial opportunities and obstacles they've never seen.